every toy line, in my opinion, has a definitive release. A package that just encapsulates everything the toy line was, what's great about it, every aspect of it. For G1 Transformers, I think that's Megatron. For Toy Biz, Marvel Legends, or just Marvel in general, I think that's their Bullseye. For Super 7 TMNT, that's Slash. But the Playmates line, it's a little hard to figure out what is the definitive release, because there were so many, I guess, strands of release. They had the characters from the earlier years, they had all these variants, and they had also their gimmicky toys. And when I think about it more and more, what I think is all of those, what encapsulates what was great about all of those strands, I eventually come to the 1991 Storage Shell Turtles. Now, Playmates TMNT as a line, eventually it would progress from the more simplistic faces of its earlier figures releases, and we would go into these more zany, cartoonish expressions. The perfect before and after is Bebop from the first series and then Worm from a later series, and you could just instantly see the way that the style is developing. And this also is just particular sculptors. I think if you actually look across a lot of releases, and like this, especially the turtle variants, and look at their faces, you can almost begin to parse out who might have sculpted what. I think that the Storage Shell Turtles are very emblematic of the future of the line at its time, where it was developing these more zanier looks, and the turtles were the kind of encapsulation of that development. It's especially notable because in a lot of toy magazines from around that time, you would even see them start using the Storage Shell Turtles like in place as just normal turtles when they were showing off like vehicles or just general accessories. That also, I can't pin down the exact year of the specific like magazine screenshots I have and I've seen. So maybe it could just be around the time of their release. I know they also didn't get reissued as much as the original Turtles, so maybe there's more of like an options thing, but it's generally, I think it's very acceptable to say that they were definitely considered a option. This could be your main turtles. Now, the Storage Shell Turtles have some obvious off-the-bat differences from their 88 counterparts. I wouldn't be talking about them if they didn't. They have new head sculpts. They do have the same bodies as the original. It's not just like a copy-paste of the same modular pieces. They have the same biceps and legs. It's not like modern reissues, where they just, like, I guess the intern who managed those, like, didn't do their research to see that they actually had different arms and legs. But, whatever, I guess. It's not like, it's a very important line or whatever for Playmates. we don't buy the reissues in my household. But on top of new heads, there's also colored belts on top of that. Obviously, the accessories are different. They have new accessories that I'll be talking about. Something interesting that's kind of small is that as the belts are a little bit stretched, I would imagine this is a part of the Storage Shell gimmick. But yeah, the belts are a little bit stretched. I think it's the fit around their bodies. Also, Leo and Donnie don't feature their shoulder straps, which I'm okay with. I think I made a point about it in my review of those figures, but the fact that both Leo and Donnie have the straps, I think, demoralizes the unique value of having turtles with unique accessories like that. So I'm cool with its absence. I don't think it's a major loss. And I can also understand people that might actually even prefer it. Their weapons accessories are on the belts at the same time as well. So that's still there. And then something else about the belts is that the yellow used for the emblem actually looks a little bit lime greenish. But looking at the originals also kind of use the same paint, so maybe I just wish they used a better shade of yellow. But it's not like... It's not too much of an issue, honestly. It's only something you notice if you're like me and you stare at them. But those aren't the only differences, and we will get into later comparisons, individual comparisons about them in just a moment. One time in elementary school, there was like a substitute who had a spare Game Boy, and I really wanted it, so I begged her for it. And she brought it for me the next day, because she was subbing multiple days in a row. And she smuggled me the Game Boy, and to hide it, I would hide it under my coat, and I just like held it there all day, suspiciously holding my hand under my coat. Nobody ever questioned it. I guess none of the other people bothered or cared enough. But yeah, they smuggled me a Game Boy. I still have that Game Boy, but its battery does not work, and like new batteries don't work. So it's there as a memory of her as a college student. I wonder where she is now. First up is Leonardo, and when I talked about the 88 Leonardo, he was the one I probably had the most negative taste to have coming out of. He had my least favorite face. He didn't stand it particularly well. And going into this one, I will say that I think that with some caveats, he might be at least one of my favorites of the storage shell line. To start off with, he has a pretty much new expression. All of the new heads, to some extent, I think are in reference to the 88 heads. But Leo has pretty much just a new face altogether, which is fine. I mean, I've said it before. Leo had the worst head sculpt of the 88 turtles. So now, in my opinion, I also think he has the best head sculpt of the storage shell turtles. It's this really fun kind of mix between like gritted teeth, but also kind of like a smile. It fits into multiple scenarios really nicely. And something I don't see anybody talking about is actually the eye shape of the turtles. Now, obviously, the 88 turtles had their own unique eye shape, but I don't see many people talking about the fact that I think the storage shell turtles are in some way trying to replicate those eyes. I'll talk about it more as we go, but on Leo here, you can kind of see how their eyes pinch off on one side and round out. Granted, it can kind of look like that they're just pinched at both ends, but either way, that's something unique to him, which I like to think of as kind of just a way of them adapting that original aspect of the Leo head. I'm not exactly sure if the blue is a darker shade. I think it is. I'm looking at it right now in the blue on... It's probably not picking up on camera super well, but in person, the blue on the left looks a little more vibrant and honestly a little glossier, whereas on the right, it looks a tad bit darker. I think the paint for the storage shell turtles in general is a bit different than what the 88 turtles used. There's some like small changes. I'll be highlighting those as I go on. Of course, they have the different belts, and I think Leo with the blue belt is fantastic. It's one of my favorite aspects of the... It's one of my favorite like belt colors for the storage shell turtles, if that makes sense. He looks really good with it. You might immediately notice that my storage shell Leo is not carrying his sword. They're both on his back. So then, what is he carrying? Well, I have him carrying Usagi's longsword right here. And if you want to question why, it's because for whatever reason, his swords do not fit in his hands for me. I think it's just a me problem, though, because I see other people carrying it just fine. I think for whatever reason, the guy who had this before me, I guess he just like shoved shit in his hands or something. Maybe he gave him like accessories that were too big for his hands. But yeah, he couldn't hold them, and so he holds Usagi's longsword just fine. I think he looks better with it, honestly. I actually want to go out, and I want to find another Usagi longsword, so we can have a pair. And either way, I also just like how the sword's looking. Now, something else about my Leonardo that I've noticed is that Leo does not stand for shit. I mean, it's just, he's always fallen over. I only recently kind of got him into, like, I guess the perfect leg ratio position, where he isn't falling over constantly. But it would be a non-uncommon occurrence in my household for Leo to fall over on the shelf. And it can be really annoying. I don't know if everyone's copy is like that. I've heard some people complain more about, like, Donnie falling over. Maybe it's just me. Part of it is definitely the fact that I insist on having his swords on his back. That's not helping. But, I mean, I empty out his shell. Just to make sure, he doesn't fall over as much. It's another thing to note, by the way, that the shells on the back of the turtles, as a result of them being a separate piece, you can actually see that it's kind of it's just a cleaner cut, because they get to be printed in this plastic, whereas the original turtles, it was all one piece, so they had to paint it. And so that leads to like a little bit of a non-perfect application there. Not a flaw in the 88 turtles, but definitely an improvement for the storage shell turtles. It's just an overall improvement, in my opinion. It does everything that the original Leo was failing at. He did better. With exception to standing, I do think original Leo stands a bit better than storage shell Leo, but that's fine. Now that also leads us to another fact about these storage shell turtles. One of the differences is that the originals have ball joint hips, but these guys have swivels. I don't think it affects articulation too much. It might affect stability, because, obviously I know my Leo isn't standing as well, so that's, evidence A. But I don't think it's a big thing that I worry about when it comes to articulation. I actually find that it's a little easier to get them, crouching over a bit with the swivels, so I have no issue with it. Moving into Donnie. Donnie has the same kind of stern expression. This is another example you could see of, I think, the new heads copying the eye shape of the old heads, because old Donnie had very triangular, angular eyes. Not in the same way that Raph does, but just kind of harder towards the ends, but kind of pinching in. And on the new Donnie head, we actually see that geometric shape still maintained. It's not exactly the same. It feels like a little more of like a pinched rectangle, but it still is vaguely the same shape. Donnie also seems to have a bit of a lighter green-brownish tan here. The tan green is pretty much a different shade. This actually might come up on camera. It's a lot more prevalent in person, but he's definitely a different shade of green. I actually like it a little bit more than the 88 series, but that's probably just me. Interesting thing about him is I think he only comes with one bow staff, which I mean, yeah, Donnie only has one bow staff, but the 88 Turtles came with two. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of like a neutral point, I guess, if you really needed that extra bow staff. Sorry. I'm sure you'll find one. I really like the purple for his belt. This is, next to Leo, this is also probably one of my favorite ones. I mean, none of them look bad with it, but this is also really nicely done. Although the lime greenish yellow they use for the logo is definitely the most prevalent on Donnie's shelf. Not my favorite look there. This is one of those improvements. I do think I prefer the Storage Shell ones. I really like the head sculpt. I like the way he bites down. He looks really good with the bow staff on his back. I mean, that's just the Playmates turtles look good with the bow staff on their back in general. But because these turtles with the new accessories, they actually, I think, incentivize you to put their weapons in the storage. I really like the look of how I have this Donnie almost always with his bow staff on his back. It's really nice. Yeah, I think this is an improvement, just like Leo. Now, moving on to Mikey, before I say anything else, do you see it? There's a choice difference between the 88 and a Storage Shell Mikey that I don't see almost anybody mention. But I noticed it almost immediately when I had them next to each other. He has a different orange. Like, the Storage Shell Michelangelo has a slightly hotter shade of orange than the 88 Turtles, and I think almost any other Mikey release. I don't... Like, just thinking over all the Mikeys I've seen and I have, I don't think any other release has this kind of more hot orange. And I really like it. I actually prefer this orange to the original 88 one. It has a nice harsher contrast with his green. And I think it is the same green. I can't, like, while looking at it right now, they look to be the same shade paint. The shells are even quite spot on. That just might also be... I know the shells, like, vary from release to release on the 88 Turtles. The orange belt looks really fun. I like it. I really did think that like it wouldn't contrast super well with the yellow logo, but it's fine. I think it works. His face however, is the most dead ringer reference to the original, with the kind of the bite off to the side. This is definitely the most dead. It's a dead ringer. It's the same face. The eyes as well. He's kind of doing that kind of squinty eye, at least for one of his eyes. It's not the easiest case for it being the same kind of eye shape, but I didn't think it would be 100%. Another thing I also want to notice is that the Storage Shell Turtles head sculpts always have their bandana ends kind of off to the side of their head, which I really appreciate. It makes them more visible. A big pet peeve of mine for turtle figures is when the back bandana of their eye wrappings. The words at the tip of my tongue, whatever. I'll put it. It's just bandana. Yeah, no, I was already saying the word. Whatever. But like when the flaps on the back are eclipsed by the head, that's a bit of a pet peeve of mine. And the Storage Shell Turtles, thankfully, avoid that. Now last, but honestly maybe least, is Raph here. Off the bat, when it comes to color differences, I think both the red and the green are a little bit duller. Not necessarily darker, just a little bit of a less vibrant paint is being used here. The face is also notable. Now, this might be the only one where I might not actually prefer the Storage Shell one. It's an exaggerated kind of version of the gritting teeth, with fury in his heart and his eyes, but it's so exaggerated that I think it kind of just isn't as appealing as the original, which was a little more of a subtle grit, but it looks nice. I think it would have been maybe a little better if his face was a little, not necessarily closer to Leonardo's, but like that same level of grit, just more obviously angry. And I think that would have been fine. I don't hate this head either way. It's still a great head. I just don't know if it's not a blowout of the original heads that I think the other Storage Shell heads are. It's just not as fun of a difference. As you can see here, I have Raph with 2 weapons in his hands, and he actually still has the weapon storage in the back, even though he doesn't even come with a push dagger. That's an 88 push dagger I put in there anyways. Just because, why not? It's a place to fill. There's not really as much to say. He's another one of the Storage Shell Turtles. I don't know if he's the worst of them. Maybe he's the least impressive, I guess. The red belt obviously looks good. Red, yellow, it's always been a tried and true color format. it contrasts well with the yellow and the green of his body. Works out nicely. I actually have a bit of a funny little story about this guy. So when I bought him, I had no idea, but he actually had a Michelangelo back shell. I did not notice this until I purchased the 88 Turtles, and I had, their extra push daggers. I said, well, I'll put one in the back of my storage shell, my storage shell raft, because, he didn't have one, might as well. And I looked back there, and there wasn't one. He had, nunchuck holders, and I was like, well, wait a minute. And so I had to, on the spot, go out and buy a raft shell. Thankfully, there was somebody just selling a raft shell for, what was it, $12? I mean, yeah, a lot for a raft shell, but I really was prepared to just buy raft again and have, a spare raft sitting around. So it's kind of nice to be able to just buy the shell and not have to worry about it. That does mean, however, I just have, a random Mikey shell laying around. Maybe that'll come in handy for photography one day. But, whatever. I do want to say about the colored belts is that the main emblem here being red, the color, I use red in this case. I don't necessarily dislike it, but I think I would have preferred it if it was a little more inventive, maybe if the inside was black, or maybe if they could do something similar to what Tournament Fighter did in its promo art, is have it be kind of a silver, or at least a white. I know for their Next Mutation Venus, they used a bit of silver for her emblem, so I don't think it's too out of the realm of possibility to ask that they use a bit of a silver paint there. It would have been better, especially because they're already painting, the emblem. I would have traded it out just to have, the emblem be sculpted. I think the emblem is already sculpted, but, to have the emblem be silver, I think it would have looked better. Moving into accessories, I'm just going to really straightforward, not buy, this figure comes with this one, because I think if you're going to buy any of these, you're probably just going to buy them straight as a whole group, and so these are all kind of interchangeable accessories amongst all of them. But I'm also not going to touch on the original 88 weapons that are reused from that. They will come with ninja stars here, which, that's nice and all. If you want my opinion on those and the iconic weapons, you can watch my critically beloved review of the original 88 Turtles. Skip to that section, get my opinion on them. They're cool, they're great. Usagi's longsword, also cool, also great. Maybe someday I'll talk about Usagi. But moving into these, the first and immediately noticeable weapon here is the quote-unquote battle pizzas. There's 4 of them. I have 4 of them, but I have 2 of the same one. They have different unique stickers. They're supposed to be different flavors. You could use these as them eating the pizzas, but I don't think it's a massive cool. Leo in particular, I remember these as being very much Leo because the reissue came with 2. I have 2, but I think they're both just 2 original ones. These kind of fist dagger climber things, Knuckles. I don't know if I say brass knuckles, just knuckles. They're pretty cool. You gotta just put them on his hand. He can hold them. I don't think you can actually push them around his fingers. So maybe they're not knuckles, actually, and I'm just making that up. But, they're neat. I don't get much use out of them, but I could imagine somebody getting use out of them. I think it's actually a Raph accessory. But Raph comes with his boomerang. I haven't personally used it much, but I can imagine somebody using it. I actually think I think another figure helped. No. In the Next Mutation line, they came with another boomerang accessory, and I remember using that, so you can get some use out of this. I just haven't. There's this kind of funny little fish knife accessory. A lot of these are, weirdly animal-themed, you're going to notice. Actually, I think that boomerang is an animal, I just didn't pick up on it. But yeah, this is just a knife, straight through a fish's mouth. You'd think they wouldn't do this, but I think, this is this is when Mirage is ongoing, so these were just killers. They would fucking kill Shredder, knock that guy off a building and blow him up. So, I don't know, I guess it's on character for them. This is really fun. I really like this accessory. You'd get a lot out of this. Here we have a little axe. I think the blade here is it just a blade? Yeah, I don't think this is actually an animal-themed one. But it's just an axe. It's a good-looking axe. Works really well. You can probably actually get a lot of your figures to hold this. It's just a general axe, which is nice. But yeah, actually, now that I think about it, a lot of these aquatic-themed ones, you could actually probably give it, Ray Fillet, maybe? He's a marine biologist. It may be even more out of character for him to use, these, basically torture weapons, but, the weapons are the one being tortured. I don't know. Could be neat. You make up whatever you want. Ray Fillet is, such a flexible character in the franchise already. Here we have another axe. This one is an animal. I think it's a manta ray there. Yeah, it's a manta ray. It's wrapped around. There's a spike ball at the end. This one's fun. I really enjoy this. I think their fingers actually lock around these little wrappings here. They wrap around them really nicely. They get a good grip in this. This might be one of my favorite accessories here. Next up, we have probably the funniest one. It's just a possum. Like, it's not even a weapon. It's just a possum. I have Leo holding all the time. They're just beaming guys over the head with a possum. I don't know what to say. It's a well-sculpted possum. You probably could just use this as, like, a normal possum in a, like, photo, but it's always just funnier to have Leo or whoever just beaming foot soldiers with, like, live animals, so... Next we have probably my favorite of the accessories. This is kind of like a scythe sickle. I can't recall if this is an animal. I don't have the boxes, so I can't check, what these accessories are called. It's just a general hook. But this is really fun. I like having Mikey hold this. It looks really nice, especially because I actually don't have the other nunchuck to him. So this is just kind of handy to put in his hand. And it looks really cool. I really enjoy photographing it. And last, but not least, we have this little blowfish mace. This one's kind of fun. Blowfish is bad. Like, he's in agony. He's not having a good time. It might be the most cruel weapon, and so I like to give it the RAF. It has just a little bit of dimension to the chain there, which I kind of appreciate. It would have been very easy for them just like this to be a very flat chain. But no, it looks like they really tried, and I appreciate that. Overall, I think that the Storytell Turtles have way better accessories than the 88 Turtles. I mean, the 88 Turtles, the weapons were nice, and the push daggers were nice, but outside of that, a lot of them were pretty useless. I mean, they had, like, the comma knife, and that was pretty neat, but I don't think it was as neat until Super 7, like, improved them in every aspect, and then, like, retrospectively started using them for the Turtles a bit more, maybe? I don't know. I mean, let me know if that's not the case for you, and you, like, love the comma, but it was never as fun, and these are so much more fun. They're so much more full of personality, and they all have individual accessories. I mean, they even have individual pizzas, which it's above and beyond, really. And it's one of the ways in which I like to think of this as the definitive pair of releases for the Turtles. They have a gimmick. They're both new characters in the way of, like, they're kind of like a version 2 of the Turtles, and they're also variants. Getting into some non-Playmates TMNT comparisons, here we have it next to your Fury Toys Summer. I want to talk about this guy soon enough. I actually want to talk about all the Fury Toys Turtles soon enough. This guy's great. I mean, yeah, obviously they're very different style. And I think it's really interesting. They're actually like the same kind of scale. That's kind of fun. But yeah, could be like a fun like little crossover event. Here we have it next to your Super 7 Ultimate Slash, the definitive figure from that line, in my opinion. And I actually think this is actually a pretty nice comparison, especially if you really wanted Slash to be like a much bigger character. You can honestly get this to work. Kind of the same way that you can get, like, Super 7 Muckman to work for your Playmates Turtles. I've seen people, like, pose that with their Playmates Remastered Turtles. So, yeah, I mean, this looks nice. Someday I do want to talk about those Remastered Turtles, but not today. Next, we have it next to your G1 Megatron in Skids. And I actually don't hate this scale. I mean, obviously Skids is a bit too small, but I think Megatron is a fair enough size. I've said it before, I don't my Transformers to be like 6 times the size of a human. I think generally if like 3 times the size is fine, but for toys, I'm a little lenient. I don't hate this scale. I wouldn't like despise posing them next to each other. I would probably use my other Transformer figures, maybe, preferably, but I don't hate it. They're also small vintage toys, has that kind of theming there. Next up, we have it next to your MP36 Plus Megatron, and then also, just kind of out of nowhere, here it is next to your Beast Wars Cheetor. I think mine's a reissue, but I don't mind. They're fine in reissues. Hasbro's better at reissues than Playmates is. But yeah, the MP scale is much better for these turtles. I definitely would recommend these. This is a scale dramatically. This is a way better scale. Especially MP Megatron. I've actually taken some pictures of MP Megatron with my Playmates figures, and it's a really fun pairing. I think I've mentioned it before, but they just look nice with each other. I think Cheetor look nice. I think the Predacons and the Maximals, I think off the top of my head, I haven't actually sat down and watched Beast Wars. I think they're smaller than normal Transformers by virtue of turning into animals. I guess this could be a cool scale into that assumption, but if I'm just wrong, I'm wrong, and I'm an idiot, so sorry. Here we have it next is some assorted baddies next to your Kenner Terminator, your Galoob and Mdashi, my last review, and next to the Skeleton Warriors Oracula. You've already seen these comparisons if you've been watching all my reviews. I thought it'd be handy to put them all here all at once for y'all. No major eraser this time. I'm cutting that one. We're not the major eraser, not today. But Yeah, these are all great comparisons. I think, especially Aracula is kind of fun. I don't know why, I'm just like gravitating towards Aracula as a comparison. And I thought she's also nice. They're all great. They're all great. Many words to say a simple idea. And then here we have it next to some of your other turtle figures, next to the Super 7 Michelangelo, the NECA Mirage Raphael, and then the Playmates Next Mutation Venus. It's kind of just fun to see them next to each other. It's especially fun to see them next to the Super 7 turtles, which are based off the 88 turtles. Venus wouldn't fit in with these guys, I don't think. She obviously fits in with her turtles best. Their proportions are just totally off, and the style's off, but it's kind of fun to see them next to each other regardless. But then, of course, I think the much more interesting conversation is, how does these turtles compare next to other Playmates Turtles figures in comparison to the 88 turtles? Because as I said earlier, I do really think that these could be like a good option for just your main vintage Playmates Turtles. I mean, they're my option. I like to pose these guys above the 88 ones. And so there's a question of how does it pair in comparison? Granted, they all compare fine with each other. Like, there's no, like, bad comparison here. I just like to have a conversation about who do I think they pair nicest with? And getting into that, if you're like me and you don't like the 88 Shredder, and you use the Super Shredder as your main Shredder, I personally like how the Super Shredder looks next to the Storage Shell Turtles more, just because it's a more extreme design to use as your main Shredder. It fits their more extreme faces, whereas the 88 Turtles naturally just feel a bit closer to that more Mirage-esque Shredder. Bebop and Rocksteady, here represented by Rocksteady, I think do pair better with the 88 Turtles, however. It makes sense, of course, they're part of the same line. They were both released in 88. It's just a more reserved head sculpt in comparison. We never really got, like, another Bebop and Rocksteady that fit with the Storage Turtles. I mean, we got, like, the wacky action ones, but I don't know if I'd use those. Granted, they still pair nicely. They still pair fine. I still like to pose them together, but they definitely are a little more natural next to their wave mates. And speaking of Usagi, here he is next to them. And it's kind of a bit of a toss-up, honestly. Sometimes I think he looks better with Storage Shell. Sometimes I think he looks better with 88. Right now, I'm leaning Storage Shell because he has a more, like, extreme angry expression. But I could also see 88. Once again, it's a bit of a toss-up. Either way works. Venturing outside of TMNT here for a moment, here we have it next to the Toxic Crusaders Toxie from Playmates. Even though the entirety of the Toxic Crusaders line outside of Toxie, I think, pairs dramatically better with the Storage Shell Turtles, I think Toxie specifically pairs a bit nicer with the 88 Turtles because he's the most composed, I guess, the most reserved of that series. But the rest of the Toxic Crusaders are definitely very Storage Shell pilled, I guess. Muckman is a bit of a toss-up also. I see it going both ways, but I'm a little more leaning towards 88 because his facial expression is a bit more reserved than I think that the sculptor behind Storage Shell might have done. Watch Me Be an Idiot, and they're both sculpted by the same guy, but, I mean, once again, it works both ways. I said in the beginning, everything still works. This is just me giving my opinion on which one I think works better, and I think that they work better with 88. Bit of a pull here, but here we have it next to the Playmates Last Ronin release, which is kind of in the style of the old toys if you look at his head sculpt. He definitely 100% fits way better with the 88 Turtles. He's explicitly modeled after them, notably. I actually like to pair him with some clear plastic turtles I bought. I'll be putting up the guy who I bought it from up on screen right now to kind of just plug that. I want to talk about those more in depth someday in a short review. But they're fun. I recommend them blankly up front. But, I mean, yeah, 88 all the way. Moving into variants, here we have Samurai Leo. 100% fits way better with 88. You might begin to notice why if you're just looking at him and Raph next to each other for too long. He's literally using Raph's head. It's just, it's an 88 figure, basically. So, landslide 88 win. And then Jim Lee Michelangelo. I mean, it's just such an out there concept that it's held to no standard of comparison or being likened to any of these. I personally like to put it next to my Storage Shell just because I think the colors line up. The Storage Shell is a little brighter by virtue of having colored belts. That's up to personal preference though. I want to finish my Jim Lee line. I think that'd be really fun. Maybe one day. That'll be a review someday. Not today. And now we have them next to Caveman Leo and Dwarf Donnie. I would say that Caveman Leo fits a little nicer than yours. Dude, come the fuck off. Well, if you might have heard, my camera died out. Not too big of a deal, honestly. That was gonna be my last comparison, anyways. So I hope you enjoy whatever visuals I'm putting up on screen right now. Could be anything. I might just play like a whole goddamn movie, like in like times 70 speed. But getting into my recommendations, since we're wrapping up here, anyways, I definitely recommend them. I mean, I really recommend the Storage Shell Turtles. I guess if you're like not really a big like Turtles collector, if you just want vintage figures, yeah, the 88 line is more iconic. Probably get that. But if you're a Turtles collector and you even have like any interest in Playmates Turtles, the Storage Shells are must-haves, especially if you're getting the variants. If you're getting variants and you don't have Storage Shell Turtles, like, what are you doing? I mean, collect what you want and collect freely. Your heart's content, but, they really are must-haves. If I had to rate them, I would say they're kind of like Pac-Man Championship Edition. They might bounce off of a casual collector, casual fan, but to those who are really into Playmates, into vintage toys, into vintage TMNT, or any of that, the Storage Shell Turtles, I think, are really fantastic. They're great. You can spend all day playing with them. And I know that they're on my main TMNT shelf. I really love them. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this review. Something kind of quick I wanted to do. Between school and work, I've been having trouble getting this recorded. So, finally have it done. Pretty, intricate notes I have. So, I hope you guys enjoyed. And I hope you have a nice day. Goodbye.